Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Blissful Living Podcast. This is the Queen of Feeling Fabulous, Rochel, or Dr. Rochel Marie Lawson, and I hope you are having a magnificent day. Now, the Blissful Living Podcast is a space where we talk about wellness, wisdom, and wealth, how it can flow into it easily, as well as wellness and wisdom. And I am going to say that we live this show boldly and unstoppably. And so if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. But I say this is perfect time to go ahead. Excuse me, we're getting a little bit of feedback, so I'm not sure what's going on. Okay, maybe that's better. All right, so let's get back to the show. So if you got some time, go ahead and find a place to sit, get you something to drink, pen and paper, because you're going to want to take notes. Nuggets of gold are always captured on this show. And while you're doing that, let me take care of business. I want to thank our sponsors, Blissful Living for You at Blissful Living, the number 4, the letter U.com. Check that site out. If you're looking to increase your wellness, wisdom, and wealth, then I highly suggest you check them out. Again, we're getting feedback. I'm not sure if it's on your end, Dr. Janae.
I don't hear anything on my end unless did it sound like paper shuffling?
No, it's just, well, now it's gone. It's weird. Anyway, so welcome to the show, Blissful Living for You. If you're looking to improve your wellness, wisdom, and wealth, as well as the fabulous telecommunications installation company in Silicon Valley, been around since 1990, and they specialize in installing voice data, fiber optic cabling, and setting up your complete network distribution. The fabulous All Day Cable Inc. It is a business that if you have those needs, you want to deal with them, you want to give them a call because they are a premier company. They've been in business for 35 years, y'all. So I'm just saying they handle small, medium, and large corporations. So if you're in a need for that, go ahead and check them out at alldaycableinc.com. All righty, so we've got this fabulous guest. So let me tell you about our show today. It is a very special show because I've had Dr. Bishop-Nesbit on my show. And it's always nice to have that back. Let me tell you about Dr. Janae. She is the founder of Thrive Well Consulting, LLC, a wellness coaching practice specializing in personal and professional development. Affectionately called Dr. Janae, she is an educator. She's an education consultant, certified wellness coach, and certified grief coach, speaker, and author. Dr. Janae is critical in helping clients build their resilience so that they can improve the quality of their life, personal lives, I should say, and it meets with their professional goals. She educates the community in thriving the 8 dimensions of wellness, self-care, work-life harmony, and moving forward from grief to gratitude. So I want to bring Dr. Janae to the show. Hello, my friend. How are you?
I am great. How are you? I am just so thrilled and happy for all that you are doing that empowers women and empowers the community. You are a trailblazer. I'm so glad to be here today. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for saying yes. It's been a minute since we've had our last bit of conversation. And so I want to jump in because I neglected in my haste to tell the audience what we're going to be talking about with you today. And so, audience, what we're going to be talking about with Dr. Janae, the 8 dimensions through self-care. And my first question to you is, how did you get to this wellness industry, this wellness enhancing, I should say, industry?
Oh, wow. That's a perfect question. Well, you know, I entered when you and I met was back in 2014, but then in 2016, I suddenly became widowed. My husband, at 52 years old, had a fatal heart attack on a Monday morning, and we were both school administrators. And so at that point, you know, I was accustomed as a woman leader, burning the candle on both ends, and didn't realize I was actually burning out in the middle. And so at that point in time, it was a period of transition for me, my sons. We were empty nesting. I was enjoying my career as a school principal, but I didn't realize the toll that burnout and stress can have on our well-being, because we are multitaskers, right? And
Right.
so I entered this wellness space right after writing my first book, which was How Much Joy Is in Your Journey. But I couldn't really push that book as much because I was navigating through the grief process. So since that time, I left being a school principal, having served in leadership there and served in leadership in the military and in the community. And then I relocated, downsized my life, relocated to a whole nother state. And I decided, you know what? I think there are other women like me who struggle with well-being, or they think they're doing well. And so that first book, How Much Joy, it was based on some research that the National Wellness Institute did. And I began to use that as a foundation blueprint for me reinventing and reigniting my life. So with that, I ended up writing a 90-day gratitude journal as well. And then 8 dimensions for going from grief to growth, which was part autobiographical. And I encourage all of the women leaders out there and all of those striving for blissful living to realize that it's never too late to create that better version of yourself and make the rest of your life the best of your life. So that loss jump-started me into this space of how those dimensions of wellness can help us thrive and recharge.
Wow. Phenomenal. I remember when we first met, our first podcast. This is a follow-up podcast. But when we had our first podcast, we talked about the grief, you know, with regards to you losing your husband. How it was just, you know, so sudden. So we're going to take a commercial break, but we'll be right back. And when we come back, my first question to Dr. Janine is, what are the most common struggles leaders face when it comes to prioritizing? And so we'll be right back. All righty, this is Dr. Rochel Marie Lawson. We're back at the Blissful Living Podcast. And so before we took our break, I wanted to put that question out there for Dr. Janine and for all you listeners so you can get that pen and paper ready to be able to capture the next goal she's going to share with us. Ask to, what are the most common challenges women leaders face when it comes to prioritizing their well-being? And we'll leave it right there because I'm going to come back to that question. So can you first, Dr. Janine?
Oh, yes. And that is so timely, you know, because do we ever, as women leaders, just operate in a vacuum, or do we always find ourselves juggling a number of different things? So what the research shows is that 3 primary areas women leaders struggle with, and that includes work-life balance pressures. And the literature says that, you know, we never really enter a state of balance, right? You know, it might be more work-life integration. And now we're having to see, okay, how does our personal lives and our professional lives integrate one another so that they can be mutually supportive? Then there's gender bias in the workplace. You know, some of our jobs and positions are one where it may not have been a predominantly female role. You may be in an environment where it's individuals of other cultures or other ethnicities or other gender. And so that is something that women struggle with as well. So many women in leadership, they encounter gender bias, and their mentors or training programs help them to be able to deal with that effectively. And then the third point that I want to emphasize with this question is limited access to support networks. I can remember when I was an officer in the military and as a school principal of not 1, but 2 schools, where sometimes as women in leadership, we're a little bit hesitant to reach out for support because we don't want to be perceived as though we can't handle it, or it's a struggle, or that imposter syndrome kicks in. Maybe I shouldn't really be here. So those 3 things are key things that impact women in leadership when we look at impacts on their well-being.
You know, some great points there and some great areas for women to start looking at with regards to if you're having some challenges with making sure you keep your health and well-being a priority, making sure you have your mindset right. And of course, always moving forward when you do successfully in your career or your business, that actually can lead to wealth. So the next question I want to piggyback off of that is, with regards to some of the women or women leaders that you deal with, clients, what do you suggest to even help them understand that they may have a challenge in this area?
Oh, wow. That's another great question, because when you're a woman in leadership, it's hard to not be stressed because you have missions you're trying to accomplish, milestones you're trying to achieve. And, I wonder if the audience realizes that research also shows that 80% of people experience some type of burnout or stress at some point in their life, whether it's in their personal life or their professional life, or both interchangeably. So one of the things that I really emphasize is this issue of prioritizing their self-care. It's so important that we look at the impact of self-care on our mental health and our physical health. This month, May 2025, is Mental Health Awareness Month, and it's also Women's Health Month. So this is a prime time that you have this topic for us to be able to talk about. So the audience may be wondering, well, Dr. Janae, I don't know how just getting my nails done or getting a massage, which is what we typically think about with self-care, can help me with my stress as a leader. Well, going back to that National Wellness Institute, what was transformative for me was realizing that there are actually 8 dimensions of wellness, and applying those 8 dimensions within our self-care as women leaders is so critical. And those dimensions include our spiritual wellness, our physical wellness, our emotional wellness, going back to mental health, our environmental wellness. What does your space look like that really nourishes and empowers you? Our intellectual wellness, being able to continue with professional learning and continued growth. Then we have our occupational wellness, because sometimes clients say, the job that I'm in right now isn't the one I'm happy with. And I tell them, let your 9 to 5 pave the way for your 5 to 9, because you still got to pay bills, right? And then we have also our financial wellness. So when we look at spiritual, physical, emotional, environmental, social, intellectual, occupational, and financial, go ahead and make that vision board and look at how you can pour into yourself in all of those 8 dimensions. And I'll be glad to elaborate on those as well in our conversation.
So let me ask you this question. Okay. Wonderful information about the 8 dimensions. And as well as I do, you can share this with a gazillion women. But if they're not even ready to take a look at how they're living, then it's out the ear, right? So
yes.
What is something that you can say right here now to these ladies that we're talking about to get them to start paying attention to one of those areas?
Wow, fantastic. Well, a key bit of advice that I always share, and I've had to embrace it in my own life as I went through a reinvention, is the idea of a lifesaver. Now, many of us remember the lifesaver candy, right? Well, when I read this book called Miracle Morning by Ron Elrod, Life Savers, the savers is actually an acrostic for how I start my day. And it has been so transformational for many people. So the S in savers stands for silence, starting your day in meditation. For me, that's starting it with prayer, that's starting it with some brief meditation. I even went through training for transcendental meditation, but quieting your mind so that you can begin to prepare for the day. The A is for affirmations, right? What we put into our thoughts really becomes action. So how do you affirm yourself? And for me, I oftentimes say I am worthy, because sometimes those dreams and goals that we have, we may not feel that we are worthy to even achieve them and embrace it in life. Then the V in savers is visualization. I was a cheerleader in junior high school, right? But for those people who were coaches of athletes, or even coaches, in terms of life skills, they help you to visualize with the end in mind. So if you start your day being able to visualize how you want your day to progress, oftentimes everything will fall into alignment. Then the E in savers is exercise. It is so important that we take our bodies and continue moving, because a body in motion stays in motion, but a body at rest will stay at rest as well. The R in savers is to read. And that goes back to that intellectual wellness. When we read, and I tell you, when I subscribe subscribed to my Audible app, I started to read ferociously. And because my car, oh, I see you laughing. My car is my personal development space. So when we read, we are constantly building our brain and our lives. And then finally, the S, the final S.
We have got to take a break. We will be right back.
Yes.
Podcast.
Love it.
Hello. Welcome back to the Blissful Living Podcast. We are dropping some guests today with Dr. Janae about wellness and how and what we need to pay attention to be able to look at our own health and well-being. So go ahead, Dr. Janae. Continue with number 5, or was it 8? I think it was number 8.
No worries. So, of course, I shared earlier about savers, right? You know, you have the silence, the affirmation, the visualization, the exercise, the reading. And then the final one is the S, which is scribing, journaling. You know, so much research supports the benefit of journaling. And there were times in my darkest hour, lowest points, where I started gratitude journaling. And then that inspired me to do my 90-day gratitude journal as well. But when we take it out of our head and put it on paper, those things that we are grateful for, that is so key. So I encourage each and every one of you to look at how you thrive in life, because it's not just about surviving, right? We all want to live a long time, but to live a long time, you want to have that quality of life. And that quality of life means holistically. And Dr. Rochel talks about this here in her podcast and all that she does. It requires us living our lives holistically so that we can continue creating that better version of ourselves as we make the rest of our lives the best of our life.
Love it. You know, it's funny because I do everything you said, I do that, and I've been doing it for a long time. Some people think that the context of doing those things takes however it gives you. So, you know, it gives you. So I'm gonna share a story. When my kids were little, okay, I'm running a corporation in Silicon Valley, one of the top 50 women-owned businesses in Silicon Valley.
Beautiful.
And I lived about an hour away from where my business office was located, office for the corporation. Anyways, my kids were very active. And so, and I love to read. Girl, I probably have 2,000 books. I'm a reader. I've always been a reader. So unfortunately, I just don't like to give my books away. It's a trip. I'm working on it. But these books all encompasses, you know, and well-being, spirit, and well-being. What I used to do was drive back and forth to the office. Back then, I would put I would record whatever section I want on the book and put it in my cassette tape recorder, or I would put them as CDs. And I started with the meditation and journaling. And so it really is lazy, super easy. It really is super easy to create this stuff. And the problem is, the challenge, I should say, is you have to make yourself the priority. Not your husband, not your kids, not your mama, not your daddy, not anybody. Because if you don't make yourself the priority in your life, you will never, ever have time at the end of the day. Start your day off with what she's saying. You don't have to do it all, but do as good as you can. If you don't get overwhelmed in your life, my friends, will completely transformed. So my next question for Dr. Janae is, why is it so difficult for leaders, these women executives in these high-profile companies, or entrepreneurs or CEOs like myself? Why is it so hard for many leaders to set boundaries? Bam. So leading into what I just said, and now why is it difficult for them to set boundaries so that they can make this time for themselves?
Oh my, to make the self-care happen for themselves?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Well, and speaking for myself and what I have known from a few women leaders is you kind of feel like it's being selfish. But there was an activist named Audre Lorde, and she is quoted as saying, self-care isn't selfish, it's self-preservation. So when you learn to set boundaries, being able to say no to something opens up your universe to say yes to other things. And at the end of the day, we need to take into account that if we don't say no to some things, we're going to run out of time. We have the same amount of hours in the day, like Oprah Winfrey, Warren Buffett, Bezos. But what we do in those 24 hours is either going to help elevate us or deplete us. So by setting personal boundaries, one of the things that I've had to do, and it was a struggle, because when you're striving and you have goals to achieve, you say you're going to move away from the laptop. You're not going to look at emails. You're not going to answer phone calls. But it's hard when you have deadlines coming up and things of that nature. But then you end up making a sacrifice with your family because you're doing this. And when you're doing that, they're losing time with you as well. So those boundaries, establish for yourself, okay, I'll take you through my typical day. My typical day, when I wake up, I go ahead and I exercise, and I said, okay, I'm going to jump into work at 9 a.m. and then I'm going to continue until about 3 p.m. Then I'm going to get dinner started. But that's because I work at home now. Guarantee you, when I was an officer in the military, I couldn't have that schedule, nor when I was a high school principal. So setting up the boundaries, establish a calendar for yourself. You got to make time to exercise. You got to make sure that you're fully hydrated. You got to make sure that you're eating nutritionally well, because here's the thing that we got to consider. If our cup continues to get empty, how can we possibly pour into the people and the projects that are so important to us?
Girl, say that one more time.
Yes, we've got to have ways to replenish our cup and set aside that time, like Dr. Rochel has alluded to, because as that cup gets empty, there is nothing there for us to be able to pour into other people and other projects. And wouldn't you, as a healthy, holistic woman in leadership, want to pour from a full cup? And that's my goal.
Woo. Okay, we'll be right back. Sorry, y'all. We're going to take one more commercial break. We will be right back with Dr. Janine, dropping some words of wisdom on how we can thrive. Be right back. Okay, we are back. This is Dr. Rochel Marie Lawson, the Queen of Feeling Fabulous, on the Blissful Living Podcast. And I am talking to Dr. Janine. So let's continue this wonderful conversation that we're having. Thriving. I'm all about community and how community has helped me in different ways. But I want to ask you this. Women leaders, a support community. Why is this important to their overall well-being?
Oh, wow. So if I understand your question, why is it so important for women leaders to be involved and support their community?
To be in a community that supports their well-being, that cultivates their well-being.
Oh, powerful, powerful. One, because now you're with like-minded people. And oftentimes when I'm in environments of individuals who are empowering each other and pouring into each other, it's like a shot of adrenaline, right? And it makes me feel, oh, wow. Well, you know what? If Dr. Rochel is able to do that, then maybe I can do that. And as I'm looking at Dr. Rochel and someone's looking at me, they say, oh, if those two ladies can do it, then maybe I can do it. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know until we're in an environment and then someone else is pointing it out to us and we say, oh, wow, that's really how I can grow my brand. That's really how I can grow as a woman, grow as a partner in a relationship, grow as a parent. So when we are in communities of support, whether that's meetup groups in person, whether that's virtual online communities, it is a way of pouring into our cup so that we have more that we can pour into others. It is a way of being able to get more in our toolkit so that we can do those things that we want to be able to do. So yes, go out. And I haven't always been good at that. I'm the oldest and the only girl in my family, one of the older grandkids. And so I've been accustomed to just getting on my path and doing what I got to do. But when I became widowed suddenly, and I had to go through 2 grief recovery programs, it was then that I realized, oh, wow, when you can do a lot by yourself, but you can do more faster when you're within a community of support.
That I'm so glad we talked about that, or talking about this, because when I first started my business, I was, I want to say, on an iceberg. I did my little stuff. I wasn't connected to any communities. When I got connected, my whole life transformed. Actually, more time for my well-being, mind, body, spirit, emotion. I got access to people that helped turn my business into extreme business. I got introduced to this, and the community kept me accountable. They kept me accountable. In fact, we kept each other accountable. So
Yes.
set goals, and you want to share too much if you knew you weren't really going to try to do it, because it was a light of fire under you, right? Kind of like your mama. I'm gonna say your grandmama. I'm the only girl in my whole generation of grandchildren, so I know what you're talking around boys. My grandma was from Houston, Texas. She didn't mind getting in your behind if you didn't do right.
That's right.
Right? And it was fortunate, because when I think about it, if I wouldn't have had that accountability as a young child, because I didn't want to get my behind whooped, so I tried my extremely hardest not to be in that situation. If I didn't have that accountability, I don't think I would have been able to have the accountability as I grew in my life and started my business and my second business. And being in the community helped me to reform that I do want to be accountable to myself. If I can't be accountable to myself, how can I justify being accountable to others? Right?
Yes.
I can't do that. How can I justify being accountable to others? And so it was. I have time for one more question. This is deep. Okay, so I want to talk about gratitude. I'm very grateful to have you. And so, can you explain the role of gratitude in enhancing our well-being? We women leaders, how can we women leaders actually incorporate being more gratitude?
Wow. Gratitude is so important. A mentor of mine years ago said that when we live a life of gratitude, it elevates our altitude. And that is so true, because nothing is guaranteed. But when we can feel grateful for the small things, whether it's the joint ventures, whether it's that someone who introduced us to a person that will help us to move our vision further, it is so important that we show ways of being grateful. And so what might that look like? Well, one, showing gratitude for yourself. When I was in those earlier years that I mentioned to you about in my widowhood, I bought a composition book from the dollar store, and I would write 3 things that I was grateful for. My coach at the time held me accountable to focus on what I still had right going on in my life. And invariably, Dr. Rochel, at night, when I look back at that gratitude journal, I can remember, as I'm reflecting on the day, so many more things that I was grateful for. But here's the thing to consider. Gratitude is a
15 seconds, Dr. Janae.
Yes. Okay. Let's be grateful for Dr. Rochel.
I was like, this is so beautiful. I can say before we go, a gratitude journal is powerful. My daughter gave me a gratitude journal, and it took me 5, and I would only record it every Sunday, but it took me 5 years. And when I go back and look at the year she gave it, I can use it for about a year. And at the end, 5, 6 years, I had so much to be grateful for that I wake up, there's no way I should be unhappy with that, because I had a whole record of being grateful for 5 years, and everything was different. So, gratitude journal. Okay, I'm so sorry. We got to close out the show. Sadly, we have Dr. Janae Bishop here with us once again. Thank you for tuning in to another empowering episode of the Blissful Living Podcast. I hope today's conversation inspires you to own your brilliance, honor yourself, and really put your wellness as a priority in your life. Cultivate a community to help you do that. If you love what you heard, be sure to subscribe to this show with everybody you love and care about. Leave a glowing review and share not only this episode with the people you like, but maybe people that you work with that you could also want to help them empower. If you're ready to go, just contact me at blissfulliving.com and join the movement of being that bold, unstoppable woman, that queen that commands her wellness, wisdom, and wealth. And until next time, stay healthy, wealthy, and absolutely wise. This is Dr. Rochel Marie Lawson, the Queen of Fabulous, and Dr. Janae Bishop-Nesbit saying goodbye for now.